Hey, what's up, guys? We got to talk about a crazy article that I just recently stumbled upon, and I've seen these types of headlines before, and every time I do, it just absolutely blows my mind. This has to do with personal finance. Says right here, according to CNBC, 61% of Americans say that they are living paycheck to paycheck, even as inflation cools. And I feel like the reason why I got to make videos on this stuff is because, number one, and I'm not bragging at all, but I do not live paycheck to paycheck. Thank God. However, just a few years ago, I was living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, what am I, 28 now? Yeah, when I was like 24 years old, I was absolutely living paycheck to paycheck. I remember I had just graduated college when I was 23. And, I was trying to figure my way out in the workforce. And, that's kind of the way it goes. I don't think there's anything wrong with living paycheck to paycheck when you are a college graduate still trying to figure out the world, figure out what you want to do, find the right job that's the right fit for you. But what blows my mind is you have so many just grown-ass people who are literally living paycheck to paycheck. And I want to talk about it because I kind of have a hot take here, and I really feel like what I have to say is the God-honest truth in regards to this. I really don't like the victim mindset. People just beating themselves up and blaming themselves. Well, I'm sorry, not even blaming themselves. Not taking any accountability and just blaming the government and just saying, oh, it's the government's fault that I'm poor, or it's the world's fault that I'm poor. Life is hard, blah, blah, blah. I want to go ahead and talk about this. Let's go ahead and read more of this article. Says right here, more than half of all U.S. adults currently live paycheck to paycheck, according to a new report. By the way, guys, 61% of the entire population of America is like 150 million Americans, because the population is like 300 million or 350 million, something like that. Either way, it amounts to about 150 million plus. So basically, what according to CNBC, according to whatever survey or whatever they did, 150 million people in America are living paycheck to paycheck. And I just want to tell you guys right now, I got to be honest with you. I really don't think that that's because of inequality. I think that that is because we live in a very debt-dependent culture. Do you kind of see what I'm saying? We live in a financially illiterate culture. We also live in a culture that scams people. Let me explain to you what I mean. Let's just take marriage, right? The average wedding costs $30,000. You could literally look that up. We live in a country that has tricked people into believing that they have to take out a $30,000 loan just to afford a 4-hour wedding. That's about as long as a wedding is. We also live in a country that markets to women that you have to get a very nice diamond ring. Diamond rings are expensive. We also live in a country, I'm not even going to just leave it strictly towards women. I'm just going to leave it towards the marketing scam system we live in. We live in a country that tells you that if you're not driving a nice car, if you're not living in a nice house, if you don't own designer clothes, if you don't own nice watches, you are a loser. And so what do people do in order to compensate for that? Well, instead of being responsible adults and making financially smart decisions like living below your means, driving a cheap piece of crap car like a Toyota, well, people instead decide to live above their means and buy things that they just downright can't afford. And that is what leads to this number right here. And this is the honest problem. And the sad part is I really don't know how to fix it, because I know they say, well, we should teach this stuff in school. But the problem is these kids are not going to listen to this stuff. They don't care. The only way you're going to get them to listen is if they have good parents who are teaching them this stuff. They'll listen to their parents if you're teaching them at a young enough age, is what I truly believe. But if you're thinking that you're just going to go to regular high schools throughout the country and make it a requirement that in order for every kid in the United States to graduate from high school, they have to take a personal finance course, I can tell you right now, it's not going to work. Most of those kids are not going to pay attention. They're not going to care. They're going to continue to do what they do. And whenever they get their money, they're going to spend that crap. That is literally how it goes. I honestly don't know how to fix it, and that's the problem. But I do just want to say, if 61% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, that represents a bigger problem. That's not inequality and inflation. And in my personal opinion, I think it's just people making really bad decisions. Most of you guys know there's this really good YouTube channel out there called Caleb Hammer. That's the name of his YouTube channel. He basically invites people on there who make really dumb financial decisions, and he just roasts them. And he basically tries to get them to make better financial decisions. And like I said, I guarantee you, if a lot of you guys look at your current financial situations, you would be surprised at how like bad decisions you're making financially. Like you'd be surprised. Like you probably think that you're financially sound and you're, brilliant financially or whatever. But I mean, honestly, I would just say this: if you're living paycheck to paycheck, chances are you're probably making bad financial decisions. Now I know some people are going to be like, "Well, Echoes, what I did everything right. I went to college, I got a degree, I'm making decent money. I just can't afford to live, blah, blah, blah." And what I would say is, how much is your rent? Because what they typically say in finance is your rent should only be 30% of your income. However, I just recently saw a statistic that said that many people are paying 50% of their income. They are spending 50% of their income just on rent. That's already red flag number one. And there are many Americans that are doing that. The other thing, are you eating out too much? You eat out a lot. That can add up. So are you paying too much for rent? Are you eating out a lot? Are you one of those crazy Gen Z or millennials that are taking 8 vacations a year? It's really easy. When you really sift through your finances, it's really, really easy to figure out why you're in the financial situation that you are in. But, I really do say this all the time. Part of the reason, it's not even the fact that I'm rich, because I'm really not. The main reason why I don't live paycheck to paycheck and why I've got myself investments and a nice emergency fund and savings and all that, is just simply because I live below my means. I look at how much income I make and I buy an apartment that represents my income. I don't lose my mind and live downtown or live on the beach somewhere or something like a lot of people are doing. And I'm not out here driving a freaking Tesla, which I'm seeing a lot of people my age that are driving Teslas and are going on social media and they're bragging about it. And I'm just looking at them like, man, I know you guys can't afford that car. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing. Matter of fact, there's another stat. I think the new stat is over the last few years, many Americans are paying $1,000 or more for a brand new car. And I know you guys are thinking that's insane. And when I say $1,000, I mean like that's their car note. They are spending $1,000 a month on their car note. That is the new stat that I'm saying. Before that stat, the stat that I saw before that is that the average American, their car note is anywhere from $500 to $600. You guys want to know how much my car note is? $200. My car note is in the upper $200 dollar range. That is how much I am paying for my car note. I drive a regular schmegler Hyundai Elantra. Like I said, I'm not out here living like Bill Gates. I don't have a helicopter or a nice car or a nice this or Rolex watches and all that. But you know what? Because I live so significantly below my means, I am able to thankfully be in a position where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. And the other thing I want to say is the apartment I live in now with my girlfriend is a little bit more expensive. But when I was living by myself, I was living in an $800 per month apartment. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, where I live, there's no way I can afford that. You would be surprised. You probably can. You're probably just one of those people who you might be a little bougie. You might be one of those people, I want to live in a city. I want to live somewhere nice. I want somewhere that has nice marble floors or carpet or whatever. You got to humble yourself. You got to humble yourself and you got to live below your means because, like I said, Americans are paying $1,000 a month for car note. They are paying way too much money for rent. On top of the fact that everything has gone up tremendously and Americans are just overall spending way too much money. I guarantee you, if you look at this 61% of Americans and you just audited their finances, you would see that many of those people have a spending problem. And so I'm just not one of those people who does the whole, sob story act and just says, oh, life is hard. It's unfair. Economic inequality, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you're just making a really bad decision in what you're doing. And then I want to scroll down to this last section right here that says credit cards are filling the gap. It says right here, more than half of all U.S. consumers struggle to afford their day-to-day lifestyle. That's the key right there. Americans are struggling to afford their day-to-day lifestyle. And the reason why is because many of you all's day-to-day lifestyles are significantly above your means. You cannot afford your day-to-day lifestyle. So what are people doing? Are they dipping back on some of their expenses? No, they're just taking out credit card debt, which is another dumb decision. It says it right here, which is forcing some to rely more on credit cards or dip into savings, making them financially vulnerable. Budgets are still very sketch, and for a lot of households, credit cards are filling the gap. People aren't financing purchases at 20% because they have other options, he added. They're doing that because it's their only option. And so the last thing I want to say is what's even crazier about this whole thing about people living paycheck to paycheck is now you have student loans that are coming out. You know, student loans are going to be due, you know, within the next 2 months. They're going to start, you're going to have to start resuming payments on your student loan debt in October. And there was already a stat by Morgan Stanley, I believe, that said that like 34% of all Americans said that they cannot afford their student loans. I just really think that when it comes to your finances, you really got to look in the mirror, because in my personal opinion, unless you're working at McDonald's or something, you know, if you're making a decent income and you don't have kids and you're single, there's really no reason why you should be paycheck to paycheck, in my personal opinion. Now, if you got a bunch of kids or whatever your personal situation ends up being, or you ended up getting a degree in gender equality, intersectional studies or something crazy where you're not making any money, then that's a different conversation. But if you're one of those people, you're making decent money, you're making like 40 or 50K a year and you're single, I just don't understand how you could be paycheck to paycheck. And I really do think that it's more than likely your fault. I know people get really mad at that, and I really don't want to come off as like some arrogant, cocky jerk, you know, like I'm necessarily blaming you, but I'm just really being honest here. I really think that if you really did a thorough audit of your own finances and you really looked at what exactly you're spending your money on, I really think you could get yourself out of the situation where you're living paycheck to paycheck. In my opinion, there's just really no excuse for anybody in this country to live paycheck to paycheck unless you're freaking working at McDonald's or something. You know, if you're working minimum wage, and I get it. But besides that, I just really don't get it, man. I just really don't get it, because like I said, I was making $30,000 a year and I still figured out a way to save money. But, you know, I also was living in an $800 apartment, you know, back when I was making a very little bit of money. And guess what? I continued to live in that crappy apartment, that $800 apartment, while my income went up. I got a really good salary bump while I was working in politics. I went from making 30K to like, I don't know, I got whatever, 38K, 40K, something. But bottom line is, every year since like 2018, when I graduated college, my income has gone up because I worked hard to figure out ways to increase my income, but my expenses never went up. That's the key. A lot of people make that mistake. When their income goes up, they start increasing their expenses. Now, all of a sudden, they're buying more clothes. They're taking more vacations. They're doing more of this. It's like, no, that's not wise. You got to create a budget. You got to create a plan. And for the love of God, in my personal opinion, I know people don't like it, but in my personal opinion, if you don't have an emergency fund, you don't at least got $1,000 in your bank account, you don't at least got 3 months of emergency savings in your bank account in case there's a rainy day or you get fired from your job or something happens. In my personal opinion, if you don't have that, you shouldn't be eating out. You shouldn't be going on vacation. You shouldn't be buying nice clothes. You shouldn't be buying designer. And I know people are like, oh, you're telling people they can't live their life. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying grow up and be a fucking adult. Is it really going to kill you to take 1 year to prioritize your financial future? 1 year? All you need is 1 good year of living below your means and, you know, really building up that emergency fund and increasing your income, and you'll be fine as long as you continue to practice good habits. But, you know, I really hate the generations we live in. My generation is like this, and so is Gen Z. Millennials are like, you know, hey, I'm going to live my life. I don't care about my financial situation and how broke I am. I'm just going to do everything I can to forget about my problems, forget about my sad, miserable, pathetic life that I pretty much caused myself because I refuse to grow up and be a freaking adult, you know. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's just the God honest truth. I hope I'm not being too harsh here. I'm really just trying to speak the truth and keep it real, because my God, I cannot believe 61% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Like, that's honestly unbelievable. And I know for a fact that 61% of Americans, there's no way that 61% of the population is making poverty wages. Like, there's no way that 61% of everybody is making less than $20,000 a year. No way. A lot of these people in that 61,000 are making 6 figures. They're making 50,000. They're making 70,000. There's just no excuse. You got to do better. So anyway, hopefully you guys got something out of this video. That'll go ahead and conclude today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.